Life doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't stop for your heartbreak, your disappointment, or your frustration. The clock keeps ticking, the sun keeps rising, the deadlines keep coming, and the world keeps moving forward whether you are ready for it or not. Life will not knock gently at your door and ask if you are okay before it demands more from you. It comes at you like a storm, fierce, uninvited, and often without warning. And in that moment, when the wind is howling in your ears and the sky above you has turned dark, you have to decide, will you let the storm dictate who you are, or will you stand anchored in what you know? That's a choice every single person faces, but very few are prepared for. The truth is, everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to succeed. We want the legacy, the peace, the strength, the respect. But wanting is the easy part. The hard part, the part almost no one signs up for, is the inner work it takes to get there. That's the work nobody claps for, the work that never makes it onto a resume, the kind of work no one sees but everyone feels in the results. It's not about learning a new skill or memorizing the right lines to say in a meeting. It's about mind work. Discipline, focus, resilience. Here's the truth. You can only win when your mind is stronger than your emotions. That's not a catchy phrase you print on a coffee mug. It's a reality you live or lose by. The strongest people you've ever admired are not those who never feel fear, anger, or doubt. They're the ones who feel those things fully, but refuse to let them be the deciding voice. And to make that choice, you have to understand the difference between a momentary feeling and a lasting decision. Take anger, for example. Anger itself isn't the enemy. It's a signal, a reaction to something you care about. But here's the problem. Anger burns hot and fast, and if you let it take the wheel, it will drive you straight into a wall. You can feel angry for 5 minutes, and in those 5 minutes, destroy something you've spent 5 years building. I've seen it happen. I've seen people lose jobs, friendships, marriages, reputations, all because they handed control to an emotion that didn't deserve it. You've probably seen it too. Maybe it was in a meeting where someone's pride got bruised. They slammed the door, stormed out, said something they couldn't take back. Maybe it was a heated conversation where one comment landed just wrong, and instead of taking a breath, they went for the jugular. And what was it all for? A bruise to the ego, a look they didn't like, a word that hit a nerve. That's what it looks like when emotion runs the show. It's like giving the keys to your future to a temporary storm. And that's what most people don't realize. The tragedy isn't that the emotion showed up. Emotions will always show up. They're part of being human. The tragedy is when the mind doesn't step in to take control. Your emotions don't care about your goals. They don't care about your family, your dreams, your values. They care about one thing, right now. They are obsessed with immediate comfort, immediate release, immediate relief. They are short-term thinkers. They want you to avoid discomfort in this moment, even if that means creating bigger pain for yourself in the future. The mind, on the other hand, is the strategist. It thinks about the long game. It weighs consequences. It remembers what you said you wanted, even when you don't feel like wanting it anymore. The mind can step back from the storm, see the bigger picture, and steer you in the right direction. But only if you've trained it to do so. That difference between reaction and response, that's the dividing line between people who live on repeat, making the same mistakes over and over, and those who rise, who grow, who build something worth leaving behind. Reaction is emotional, response is intentional, and that difference can change your whole life. The problem is, we're rarely taught this growing up. We're taught how to add numbers, how to read history, how to write essays. But we're not taught what to do when someone disrespects you in public. We're not taught how to handle the moment your body is flooded with adrenaline and you want to shout, throw, slam, run, or quit. We're not taught that your first feeling isn't always your best guide. In fact, most of the time, your first feeling is the worst possible leader you could follow. Think about it. How many times have you looked back at something you said or did in the heat of the moment and thought, I wish I'd handled that differently. You knew better. You wanted to do better. But knowing and wanting aren't enough when you haven't trained your mind to override the impulse. That's why mental strength isn't optional. It's survival. It's the difference between living life on your terms and being dragged around by every wave that comes your way. It's the difference between a life built on purpose and a life built on damage control. And here's where most people get it wrong. They think mental strength means not feeling anything. They think it means becoming cold, shutting yourself off, never letting anything touch you. That's not strength. That's numbness, and numbness will rob you of the joy, the connection, and the meaning that make life worth living. True mental strength is feeling everything: fear, anger, joy, sadness, temptation, and still being able to choose your path. It's standing in the middle of the storm with your emotions swirling around you and saying, "I see you, I hear you, but I'm the one steering this ship." It starts with awareness. You can't control what you don't notice. You have to catch the moment when the emotion arrives. You have to see it for what it is, name it, and create a gap between the feeling and your action. That gap, that tiny pause is where the battle is won or lost. When you live like that, you stop letting life shove you around. You stop being the person who's always explaining, always apologizing for what you said in the moment. You become the person who can walk away from a fight without losing their dignity, the one who can hear criticism without crumbling, the one who can stay focused on the goal even when the moment feels unbearable. Life won't slow down for you. It won't soften its edges to protect you, but you can become strong enough to face it head on. You can train your mind to be a fortress, not a fragile shell, and when you do, the storms will still come, but they will no longer own you. You'll be ready, steady, and unmoved, because you've learned that no matter how loud your emotions get, they don't get to be the captain. Let me take you back to a woman I met, Nadia. She was a young sister out of Chicago, sharp as a blade, with a mind that could cut through complex problems like they were paper. She wasn't born with privilege, but she had that grit you can't buy, that fire you can't fake. She started at the very bottom, an intern at a tech company, making coffee, taking notes, handling the work no one else wanted to touch. But she didn't complain. She soaked up every opportunity like a sponge. She showed up early, stayed late, and wasn't afraid to help anyone who asked. She became the person everyone knew they could count on. Slowly, step by step, she climbed. From intern to junior developer, from junior developer to project lead, then to engineer. Every move she made was deliberate. Every late night an investment in her future. Then came the day the promotion list was released. She'd been eyeing this role for months. She'd been doing the work already. Her team respected her. The clients loved her. She felt it was only a matter of time before her name would be there in black and white, right where it belonged. But when she scanned that list, her name was missing. She looked at it twice, 3 times, thinking maybe she'd skipped over it. But no. Her spot had gone to someone else. She told me she sat in her car that day, engine off, just staring at the steering wheel, replaying everything she'd done over the past year. She felt that familiar weight in her chest, the heaviness of being overlooked, and she remembered people she had known in the same position, brilliant, talented people, who had been passed over, not because they weren't capable, but because they couldn't control themselves when it mattered most. These were people with unmatched skills, but every meeting turned into a showdown. The slightest criticism made them crumble into self-doubt or explode with rage. They couldn't read the room. They didn't notice the tension in the air or the unspoken cues from their peers. They heard feedback as an attack and treated every disagreement like a war to be won. The company didn't fire them right away. Brilliance is hard to replace, but eventually the damage piled up. Bridges were burned. Teams stopped wanting to work with them. Leadership lost trust. And when it came time to move up, these geniuses stayed stuck, not because of their work, but because of the way they handled the moments in between the work. Nadia knew she was sitting at a crossroads that day. She could let her emotions write the script, or she could choose to respond differently. She had seen what happened to people who didn't choose wisely. And that's what I want to talk about, because this isn't just Nadia's story. It's the story of so many people who sabotage themselves without even realizing it. They're skilled, intelligent, and capable, but they hand over control to their emotions like a loaded weapon in the hands of a toddler. That's exactly what it's like. Dangerous, unpredictable, and often irreversible. Emotions are powerful, but they are not safe drivers. When you let them take over, you stop thinking strategically. You make decisions based on the need to relieve pressure, to get back to comfort, to soothe a bruise to your ego. And in the professional world, in any world, that's a dangerous place to be. Emotional intelligence, on the other hand, is a completely different kind of power. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to slam doors or make grand scenes. Emotional intelligence is quiet strength. It shows up when the pressure is highest, when eyes are on you, and you have every reason to explode, but you choose to stay centered. It's taking a breath before you answer. It's pausing when the heat rises in your chest and your first instinct is to cut someone down. It's walking away from an insult without dragging your dignity through the mud. It's hearing someone speak against you and deciding you don't have to attend every battle you're invited to. That's not weakness, that's wisdom, that's self-control in action. But here's the part that's hard for most people to accept. Emotional intelligence doesn't come naturally to everyone. In fact, for many of us, it's the opposite. It takes deliberate training, a kind of mental conditioning, to choose a calm response when everything inside you is screaming for reaction. Think of it like lifting weights. The first time you try, it feels awkward and heavy. You might not even be able to do it, but you keep showing up. Day after day, you build the muscle, until one day, you're not even thinking about it. You're just stronger. The same is true for your mind. You train it by catching yourself in the moment, by asking, what's my end goal here? Will this reaction help me or hurt me? You train it by remembering that every decision you make is either a step toward your future or a step away from it. I've met people who never learned this lesson, and I've watched them waste their talent because of it. They were brilliant coders, persuasive speakers, strategic thinkers, but they had no handle on their emotions. In meetings, they rolled their eyes at leadership. They took feedback personally. They talked over others to make their point, and they told themselves the problem was everyone else. But the truth was simpler and harder. They were geniuses without discipline. And discipline is what turns raw talent into lasting success. Nadia decided that day in her car that she wouldn't become one of those stories. She wouldn't let her frustration poison her relationships or her reputation. She wouldn't give leadership a reason to doubt her maturity. She would show up the next day with the same work ethic, the same focus, and the same professionalism, because she wasn't just working for a promotion. She was working for the kind of character that would sustain her when she got it. And here's what happened. She didn't get that promotion right away. But over time, she built something even better: trust. People knew they could rely on her not just to do the work, but to carry herself with composure in the hardest moments. And when the next opportunity came around, she didn't just get the role. She was given the authority and freedom to lead in her own way. That's the reward of emotional intelligence. It's not flashy. It's not always immediate. But it's the foundation on which real, lasting influence is built. We need to stop treating emotional control like a nice bonus and start seeing it as a non-negotiable skill. Because you can be the smartest, most talented, most capable person in the room. But if you can't manage yourself, you will always be managed by others. Your technical skills might get you in the door. Your hard work might get you noticed. But it's your ability to stay steady when others lose their heads that will keep you there, and open the next door and the one after that. And that's the lesson. Talent gets attention, but discipline earns respect. And respect, once earned, is the currency that builds a legacy. Mastery doesn't mean you never feel. It doesn't mean you've somehow figured out how to delete anger, fear, or sadness from your system. It doesn't mean the storm never comes. Mastery means you can stand in the middle of that storm, soaked to the bone, wind in your face, lightning cracking in the distance, and still choose your direction. It means you can feel the pull of every emotion inside you and still decide who's in charge. When fear whispers in your ear, telling you to hide, mastery answers back, not today, and you step forward anyway. When anger shouts for vengeance, mastery chooses peace not because it's easier, but because it's wiser. When sadness wraps around you like a heavy fog, mastery forces you to lift your eyes and search for light. The goal is not to silence emotion, but to guide it. Think of emotion as a wild whore, strong, beautiful, and capable of incredible speed. But without a rider, it can run you straight off a cliff. The mind is meant to be the rider, the one holding the reins, steering that power towards something meaningful. That's why training your mind is not optional. It's essential. And I don't mean the kind of training you get from reading a motivational quote in the morning and calling it a day. I'm talking about daily, relentless practice. The kind of discipline you'd see in a warrior preparing for battle, because that's exactly what life is. One battle after another, some small, some large, all requiring you to show up ready. Emotion will come knocking. It always does. It will arrive dressed as exhaustion, tempting you to quit early. It will disguise itself as doubt, convincing you that maybe you're not cut out for this. It will take the form of temptation, urging you to take the shortcut. And sometimes it will come as old wounds, reopening when you least expect them, reminding you of every hurt you've carried. You can't avoid it, but you can be ready for it, and readiness comes from training. Just as an athlete trains their body with repetition, intention, and discipline, you must train your mind the same way. Every single day, you sharpen the blade. You pay attention to your thoughts. You notice the ones that try to pull you off track. And instead of letting them run wild, you challenge them. You ask, is this thought helping me or hurting me? You force yourself to pause in moments of chaos. You practice patience when your chest is burning with the urge to react. Because here's the truth. The untrained mind will always bow to the loudest feeling in the room. And if that feeling happens to be fear, anger, or insecurity, then your decisions will follow that lead, and the results will show it. But the trained mind, that's a different animal entirely. The trained mind can hear the noise without letting it dictate the next move. Training your mind starts with awareness. You can't control what you don't see. Most people lose the battle before it begins because they don't even realize the emotion has arrived. Anger walks in disguised as justice. Fear puts on the mask of caution. Laziness calls itself rest. And because they never stop to question it, people follow without resistance. But mastery recognizes the disguise. The moment you feel that rush of adrenaline, that tightness in your chest, that sinking in your stomach, you pause. That pause is where the magic happens. In that space, you're no longer reacting blindly. You're choosing deliberately. That's where reaction dies and intentional response is born. Of course, this isn't easy. It's simple in theory, but difficult in practice. That's why so few people do it consistently. We live in a culture that celebrates speed, instant replies, instant decisions, instant gratification. But mastery isn't about speed, it's about precision. It's about knowing that sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to slow down, breathe, and wait until your mind, not your emotions, can take the lead. Think about the leaders you respect most. The ones who inspire confidence, who seem unshakable in moments of crisis. They're not that way because they're immune to emotion. They're that way because they've trained themselves to manage it. They can stand in front of a room full of chaos, with 10 different problems pulling at them, and still project clarity and calm. And that calm isn't accidental, it's earned. It's the result of countless small decisions to pause, to breathe, to think before acting. You can start small. When someone says something that irritates you, resist the urge to snap back. When you feel like quitting halfway through a workout, push yourself to finish anyway. When fear tells you to stay quiet in a meeting, speak up. These moments might feel small, but they are the building blocks of a trained mind. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, you strengthen your mental armor. Over time, this training changes you. Situations that used to set you off lose their power. The things that once made you anxious no longer rattle you. You stop wasting energy on battles that don't matter. And perhaps most importantly, you stop being a prisoner to the highs and lows of your emotions. And here's the thing, people notice. They notice when you stay calm in situations where most people would explode. They notice when you refuse to take the bait, when you don't let someone else's bad mood dictate your own. They notice your steadiness, and they trust you more because of it. And in life, trust is a currency more valuable than talent or charm. Mastery doesn't happen overnight. It's built through hundreds of little choices, repeated over months and years. But the payoff is enormous. You become the kind of person others look to when things get hard. You become the anchor in the storm, and perhaps most importantly, you gain a sense of control over your own life that no one can take away from you. Because here's the ultimate truth. You can't control the weather, but you can control the captain of the ship. The storms will still come. Loss, disappointment, betrayal, failure. You'll still feel the wind and the waves. But when your mind is trained, those storms no longer decide your course. You do, and that's real freedom. So train your mind. Train it with as much commitment as you train your body, your craft, or your career. Train it daily because life will test you daily. When you put in that work, you won't just survive the storm, you'll sail through it with your dignity intact and your direction unchanged. And that's when you'll know. Mastery isn't about never feeling. It's about feeling everything and still choosing your path. It's about standing in the middle of life's chaos and knowing that no matter what comes, your emotions might have a voice, but they'll never have the final say.